I was 19 and living alone for the first time in a small apartment in Ohio. It was a normal Friday evening. I had just finished work, grabbed some takeout on the way home, and was looking forward to a quiet night by myself. The apartment was older, but it had charm, high ceilings, creaky wooden floors, and a tiny kitchen where I liked to cook. I had unpacked most of my things and was finally starting to feel at home. I set my bag down, took off my shoes, and flipped on the kitchen light. The apartment smelled faintly of old wood and dust. Everything seemed ordinary. I hummed to myself while I opened the takeout box, the sound of silverware clinking against the container filling the small kitchen. Outside, the street was quiet, the occasional car passing slowly by, and I felt relaxed. But then I heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible creak coming from above me. I froze mid-bite, listening. It sounded like someone stepping lightly on the floorboards. I live alone.
Evet checked.
No one should be here. I told myself it was probably just the building settling. It's an old place, after all. The sound stopped, and I tried to focus on my food, convincing myself it was nothing. Minutes later, while unpacking a few boxes in the living room, I noticed the attic hatch slightly ajar. I could have sworn it was closed this morning. My stomach twisted. I hadn't used the attic yet. Maybe the wind had moved it? But the apartment felt still. Too still, and a faint draft was coming from that direction. I could feel it brushing against the back of my neck. I shook my head and laughed softly to myself. Paranoid, I whispered. I went to push the hatch closed, but just as my fingers brushed the edge, I heard another creak. This time, it was heavier, deliberate, like someone had shifted their weight and was now crouched in the attic, waiting. My pulse jumped, and my hands grew clammy. The kitchen light flickered for a second, and in that brief darkness, I felt it, the undeniable sense that I was being watched. I left the hatch alone, trying to convince myself it was all in my head. But I couldn't shake the feeling. Something wasn't right. The normal hum of the city outside suddenly seemed distant, and the small apartment that felt like home just an hour ago now felt unfamiliar, tense. I finished my meal quickly and went to the living room. I double-checked the locks on the doors and windows. Everything seemed secure. Yet, in the back of my mind, that tiny, almost inaudible creak from the attic kept replaying. It wasn't the building settling this time. I knew it. Someone or something was up there. And for the first time that night, I felt real fear. Not the kind you read about or see in movies. The kind that sits heavy in your chest, makes your hands tremble, and convinces you that the quietest, most ordinary moment in your life is about to change in ways you can't imagine. After I got settled in my apartment that Friday night, I tried to push the strange feeling from earlier out of my mind. The apartment itself was small but had character. It was an old two-story building, made of red brick, with narrow hallways and tall ceilings. Hardwood floors ran throughout, worn in places from years of use. The kitchen had a tiny window that looked out over the alley behind the building. I liked that little view. The alley was quiet most of the time, lined with trees and old trash bins. Nothing exciting. The living room was modest. A small couch, a coffee table, and a TV on a rickety stand. I had just started putting some pictures on the walls, mostly photos of friends and family, trying to make the place feel like mine. There was a basement hatch near the kitchen door, and the attic hatch in the ceiling above me, which I still hadn't fully explored. It all seemed ordinary, normal, and safe, or at least it should have. It was around 8:30 p.m. when I finally decided to relax. The sun had gone down, leaving the room in a dull orange glow from the streetlights outside. Shadows stretched across the walls, but nothing looked out of place. I had my laptop on the coffee table and a cup of tea next to me. I was scrolling through some emails, listening to soft music on my headphones. My apartment felt empty, quiet in a good way. Just the kind of peace I wanted after my long week at work. I had chosen this apartment because it was affordable and close to my part-time job at a bookstore. The building had a few other tenants, mostly young professionals like me, though I didn't know any of them well. The landlord was friendly enough, but mostly hands-off. That night, there were no neighbors talking loudly outside, no cars honking. The only sounds were distant, the hum of streetlights, and the occasional dog barking somewhere down the street. I was alone, and I liked it that way. I had spent most of the week unpacking, organizing, and trying to make the apartment feel like home. My friends knew I had just moved in, and a couple had stopped by earlier in the week to help me carry boxes. Tonight, though, I was by myself, enjoying a normal evening, just me, the apartment, and the quiet. Yet, even in that calm, I couldn't completely shake the earlier feeling from the attic. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but something about the space above me made the air feel heavier. I told myself it was nothing, just imagination. I had work tomorrow, and I wanted to get some sleep. I had no reason to believe anything could happen here. So, I settled onto the couch, leaned back, and tried to focus on my music. The apartment felt normal, the way a home should. Everything was ordinary, everything safe. And yet, that small, creeping tension lingered in the back of my mind, like the quiet prelude to a storm. At the time, I couldn't know that this ordinary evening would soon turn into the most terrifying night of my life. After a few minutes on the couch, I tried to relax, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't entirely alone. The apartment felt the same, nothing out of place, but my mind kept drifting back to the attic. I told myself it was just nerves. I'd been living alone for barely a week. It was normal to feel a little unsettled at night. I set my tea down on the coffee table and glanced toward the ceiling. The attic hatch was closed now, but I thought I saw the shadow of the latch move slightly. Maybe it was just the light from the street lamp outside, or maybe a trick of my eyes. I shook my head and went back to scrolling through my phone. Then I heard it. A soft scraping sound, almost like nails dragging across wood. My stomach sank. It came from somewhere above me. I froze, straining to hear over the faint music from my headphones. The sound stopped, but only for a moment. A second later, it came again, closer this time. Slow, deliberate. I realized it was not coming from the attic door itself, but from the space beyond it. I held my breath, waiting. Nothing. I tried to tell myself it was the building settling, old wood shifting in the temperature. But the sound didn't fit that explanation. It was too slow, too purposeful. My hands grew clammy. I decided to stand and check the attic hatch, thinking that maybe the wind had moved it again. As I stepped closer, the lights flickered. Just a brief dimming, nothing more. But in that moment, my heart jumped. I felt watched. A chill ran down my spine, and I couldn't stop glancing at the ceiling. I wasn't imagining it anymore. The apartment felt heavier. Like the air was thicker in certain corners, especially near the hallway that led to the basement. I could hear faint creaks coming from that direction now. Each one was spaced apart, slow, careful, like footsteps. But there shouldn't have been anyone there. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a neighbor had come home and was moving upstairs. But the building's layout didn't make sense for that. The noise wasn't coming from an adjacent apartment. It was coming from inside mine. The strangest part was that everything else felt perfectly normal. My tea was still warm, my phone still lit up with notifications, and the street outside remained quiet. Yet every sound from above or the hallway made me flinch. A shadow flickered across the wall near the doorway. I couldn't tell if it was from the lamp, the street light, or something else. My pulse quickened. I moved closer to the hallway just to check. The floorboards creaked under my weight. I stopped halfway and listened. Nothing. But then, a faint exhale, almost like someone breathing, came from the darkness beyond the kitchen. My chest tightened. I backed away slowly, trying not to make more noise. I felt a wave of panic, but I kept reminding myself it was probably nothing, just my imagination. Yet that sense that something wasn't right, that I was being observed, was impossible to ignore. And deep down, I knew the ordinary evening I had planned was already slipping away. After that faint breath in the hallway, I couldn't stay on the couch any longer. My apartment suddenly felt smaller, tighter, like the walls were pressing in. Every shadow seemed darker, every sound louder. The air near the attic and basement felt colder. I didn't want to go upstairs or down there, but staying put felt just as dangerous. I moved slowly toward the living room doorway, careful not to make noise. The creaking floorboards seemed to echo, even though no one was there. Then I heard it, a soft thump from the hallway behind me. Not random, deliberate, like someone testing their steps. My stomach knotted. My first instinct was to grab something to defend myself. A kitchen knife rested on the counter. I slid it into my pocket, trying to stay calm. I tried to convince myself it was a neighbor, or maybe the building settling again. But the sound wasn't consistent with either. It was irregular, careful. The steps stopped when I stopped, and started again when I moved. I realized with growing fear that whoever, or whatever, was in my apartment was aware of me. I glanced toward the attic hatch. The latch was slightly open again. My pulse quickened. I could feel it, someone above me, waiting, watching. And then another noise, a soft scraping, like metal against wood, coming from the basement. My eyes widened. The apartment had 2 points of entry for someone hiding, the attic above and the basement below. I felt trapped. I thought about calling 911, but my hands were shaking. I didn't want to alert whoever it was that I was aware. I backed slowly toward the bedroom, trying to put some distance between myself and the noises. The soft thumping from the hallway grew closer, and then I heard it, a faint whisper of movement near the living room door. Not words, just motion. I pressed myself against the wall, clutching the knife. My heart was racing, every sound from the apartment making me flinch. Footsteps approached, careful but deliberate, coming closer to where I was. The shadow from the hallway stretched across the room, moving slowly. I couldn't see a figure clearly, but I could feel its presence. Someone was here, inside my home, and they were not going to leave quietly. I considered my options. The front door led outside, but I'd have to cross the living room where I'd just heard the footsteps. The hallway to the kitchen was open, but the basement and attic were both potential hiding spots. Every path felt like a risk. My mind raced, trying to figure out where to go, how to stay safe. Then, a loud creak from the attic hatch made me jump. I could see the edge of the door trembling, as if someone was leaning against it, testing it. The basement made a soft thud in response, as if echoing the same movement. I realized with sinking dread that I was surrounded from above and below, and that whoever it was knew I was aware of them. I pressed myself further into the bedroom corner, trying to control my breathing. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run, to hide, to do something, but the apartment felt like a trap. The noises grew closer again, soft but deliberate, a warning that I wasn't alone, and that the intruder was just waiting for the right moment. I couldn't stay hidden any longer. The noises from the attic and basement had grown louder, closer, more deliberate. My chest was tight, my hands trembling. I had to do something. Slowly, I crept toward the bedroom door, clutching the knife, trying to stay quiet. Every creak of the floorboards made me flinch. As I peeked into the hallway, I saw him. A man crouched near the basement door, hood over his head, face shadowed, just barely visible in the dim light.
He froze when he saw me.
I froze back, panic clawing at my throat. He held something long and metallic, maybe a crowbar or pipe. I didn't wait to find out. I bolted. I ran toward the living room, slamming into the coffee table, knocking over my tea. My adrenaline surged as I heard him behind me, footsteps pounding down the hallway, heavy and fast. I could hear his breathing, deliberate and sharp, growing louder with every step. I grabbed the front door handle.
Locked. Of course it was locked.
I hadn't thought to leave it unlocked. I spun around, thinking of hiding somewhere, anywhere. The closet? Too small. The bathroom? Maybe. I ran inside, slamming the door and locking it. My heart raced so fast I thought it might burst. I pressed my back against the cold wall and tried to calm my breathing. I could hear him outside.
The door.
Scraping, shuffling, a sound like metal against wood. Then a soft knock, deliberate. I flinched and gripped the knife tighter. I whispered to myself, "Stay calm.
Stay calm.
Stay calm." The knocking stopped. Silence. Then a voice. Low, muffled, almost a whisper. "I know you're in there." My stomach sank. He knew. He had been watching, waiting.
Panic surged again.
I fumbled for my phone, dialing 911 with shaking hands. I kept the line open, but didn't speak. I couldn't risk making a sound. Footsteps moved away, retreating down the hallway, then back toward the basement. I could hear a door creak and thud. The apartment groaned under the weight of his presence. My pulse was deafening in my ears. Minutes passed like hours. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Finally, I heard the front door unlock from the outside. Someone was entering or leaving, I didn't know. Then a loud bang from the basement, like a metal object hitting the floor. I realized he was inside the apartment moving. I had no choice. I threw open the bathroom window and climbed onto the small fire escape outside, my knife still in hand, shaking. I ran down the fire escape, my bare feet scraping against the metal. I didn't look back. Once I hit the street, I sprinted to the nearest neighbor's apartment and banged on their door, yelling for help. They called the police. When they arrived, the apartment was empty. No sign of him in the basement or attic. Nothing. But I knew he had been there. I could feel it in every creak, every shadow, every fleeting moment of silence. Even after the police left, I couldn't shake it. That night, I slept in my car. I didn't go back inside for days. I realized that even though I had escaped, I had no idea who he was or if he could come back. Even after discovering the attic and basement signs, I tried to convince myself that the danger was over. I changed the locks, installed extra security cameras, and slept with the lights on. Friends came over, checked in on me, tried to reassure me that it was over. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't truly alone. Weeks went by, and the apartment felt safer during the day. I would laugh at myself for being paranoid. The noises had stopped, or at least I hadn't noticed them. Yet at night I couldn't sleep. Every small sound, the floorboards settling, the wind tapping on the window, a distant car door slamming, made me tense. My body tensed, my hands instinctively reaching for my phone or the knife I kept nearby. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke to the faint creaking of a floorboard outside my bedroom door. My heart slammed in my chest. I froze, barely breathing. The sound stopped for a moment, then shifted, moving slowly down the hallway. I didn't dare get up. I wanted to call 911, but I was afraid that making any sound would draw attention. I listened. The hallway remained silent. I told myself it was probably my imagination. Maybe it really was just the apartment settling. But then I noticed something strange on my phone's security camera feed. One of the cameras I had installed in the living room showed movement. I didn't see anyone clearly, just a dark shape, slipping across the room so fast it was gone before I could focus. I froze, staring at the screen. My pulse raced. I didn't recognize that shape.
It wasn't a pet, it wasn't me.
And it wasn't a shadow from the lamp. I checked the footage again. The shape appeared briefly each night, always at slightly different times. Always near the basement or the hallway leading to the attic. I realized with a chill that someone or something was still there, still watching. Maybe it wasn't the same man who had been living in the apartment before, or maybe it was. I had no way to know. I considered moving out, but every apartment I looked at felt the same. Small, old, quiet spaces with attics and basements that could hide anyone. And I realized that the fear I had felt wasn't tied to this apartment alone. It had stayed with me. The thought that someone could hide in plain sight, waiting for the right moment, had taken root inside my mind. Now, even when I'm outside, walking past quiet streets or empty buildings, I feel that same tension, the sense that I could be observed, that danger could be closer than I think. I double-check locks. I check the attic and basement when I visit other apartments. And I wonder, could he or someone like him still be out there, somewhere nearby, waiting? Watching? Maybe the moment I let my guard down, the danger will return. I don't know who he was, or if he ever really left. And that thought, that lingering fear, is something I carry with me every day. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear a creak above me or a soft shuffle below. And in those moments, I remember, I may have escaped that night, but I was never truly alone. The apartment is quiet again. Too quiet. Even after discovering the attic and basement signs, I tried to convince myself that the danger was over. I changed the locks, installed extra security cameras, and slept with the lights on. Friends came over, checked in on me, tried to reassure me that it was over. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't truly alone. Weeks went by, and the apartment felt safer during the day. I would laugh at myself for being paranoid. The noises had stopped, or at least I hadn't noticed them. Yet at night I couldn't sleep. Every small sound, the floorboards settling, the wind tapping on the window, a distant car door slamming, made me tense. My body tensed, my hands instinctively reaching for my phone, or the knife I kept nearby. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke to the faint creaking of a floorboard outside my bedroom door. My heart slammed in my chest. I froze, barely breathing. The sound stopped for a moment, then shifted, moving slowly down the hallway. I didn't dare get up. I wanted to call 911, but I was afraid that making any sound would draw attention. I listened. The hallway remained silent. I told myself it was probably my imagination. Maybe it really was just the apartment settling. But then I noticed something strange on my phone's security camera feed. One of the cameras I had installed in the living room showed movement. I didn't see anyone clearly, just a dark shape, slipping across the room so fast it was gone before I could focus. I froze, staring at the screen. My pulse raced. I didn't recognize that shape.
It wasn't a pet, it wasn't me.
And it wasn't a shadow from the lamp. I checked the footage again. The shape appeared briefly each night, always at slightly different times. Always near the basement or the hallway leading to the attic. I realized with a chill that someone or something was still there, still watching. Maybe it wasn't the same man who had been living in the apartment before, or maybe it was. I had no way to know. I considered moving out, but every apartment I looked at felt the same. Small, old, quiet spaces with attics and basements that could hide anyone. And I realized that the fear I had felt wasn't tied to this apartment alone. It had stayed with me. The thought that someone could hide in plain sight, waiting for the right moment, had taken root inside my mind. Now, even when I'm outside, walking past quiet streets or empty buildings, I feel that same tension, the sense that I could be observed, that danger could be closer than I think. I double-check locks. I check the attic and basement when I visit other apartments. And I wonder, could he or someone like him still be out there, somewhere nearby, waiting? Watching? Maybe the moment I let my guard down, the danger will return. I don't know who he was, or if he ever really left. And that thought, that lingering fear, is something I carry with me every day. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear a creak above me or a soft shuffle below. And in those